Welcome back, folks. Where we left off, we were looking at the reset objects function and we were setting a lose condition. So right now we just have the game over and the life lost. So the next thing we're going to implement is a restart menu, and it's going to be very similar to how we have our pause menu. All right, so we'll get this line of code in here. It's going to throw an error right now because we do not have the restart menu created. So go ahead and create your restart menu. It's going to look very similar to the pause menu. I'll go ahead and skip forward to having that created. All right, folks, so this is what my form looks like right here. Like I said, pretty simple. If I look between my pause menu and my restart menu, they're pretty much the same. Just shows game over, and I got two buttons. One's called button restart, which basically restarts the game design view or that form, and then the quit I called button quit, and it just shows that it's going back to the main menu. So the next thing we're going to do is work in the code. So all we do is have two basically button presses. So if I double click each of these buttons, it's going to go ahead and put the code in for us. So there's our two event handlers right here. All right, so our code's going to be similar again to our pause menu. So if they click the restart button, we're just going to hide this form and we're going to tell the game to restart. If they click the quit button, we need to hide this form. We also need to hide the game form, and we'll go back, send them back to the main menu, and we'll show that form. Okay, that should work. So if I go ahead and hit the play button now and come in here, we'll go ahead and lose all our lives. There we go. We get that game over screen that pops up with our little game over music. You can click start new game, it'll restart it, or quit to main menu. I'll do quit to main menu. Notice it comes back here. We go into play, but our game hasn't reset yet. So we got quite a few things to fix. To make playtesting a little quicker, rather than having to lose lives all the time, we're going to go ahead and implement some kind of cheat to lose lives. I don't know if that's really a cheat, but it's just to help in playtesting. So up here in our select case where we have our keys up, right here, we need to put in a new case. All right, so make sure you have it in under the end if. So we're going to do case keys dot, and I'm going to use L for lives lost. Okay, you can use any key you want here to put it in there. And so if I look down here, all we're doing is basically running this subroutine right here when the ball reaches the bottom. So all I'm going to do is call that subroutine, and it'll call all of this. So it's basically going to mimic the ball running out of the screen. The whole reason we're doing this is just to save time. So I'm going to put that up here. So reset objects, make sure you have that parentheses in there that actually calls the subroutine. All right, so now if we go and play test, we hit play, we're playing the game, hit L. Okay, it's just a quick way to lose lives. That way you can test things a lot quicker. With more debugging purposes, notice when I go into play the game, we get all these messages down here that says ball hits paddle. Okay, it's continually sending in messages there, so we don't really need these messages anymore. Plus, there's no reset. So for example, if I stop this, all these messages stay in here, and when I play test the next session, all right, all these messages are still there. So we want to clear that every time. So I actually learned this today. We want to not use debug.writeLine. We want to put all of our debugging into this output window. Okay, if you don't have the output window down here, all right, what you can do is go up to debug, Windows, and then you have these two windows here. You can click on immediate if you want it. I have it down there. Click on output. Okay, if yours comes up different than what I have here on my screen, for example, if you have something like this, or maybe it's up here, okay, all you have to do is grab the tab and bring it down here and hover over this tab down here, and it'll put it together. Okay, you can organize these how you want, just click and drag. All right, but make sure you have the error list in the output. We're no longer going to use the immediate window, but I'm just going to keep it in there just for kicks. instead of changing all these, we're not going to need them anyways. So right now I'm just going to comment them out. So just put an apostrophe in front of it. Do that with all these debug statements. And now these debug statements will no longer be called because we already got the ball working. We don't have to mess with that anymore. All right, so it should be those 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yep. Do it with the ball hit paddle as well. So I guess there's 6. Just checking to make sure all that's going. Okay. All right. If you don't have your error list either, you can go up into View, Other Windows, Error List, and then pop that down here so you can see your errors. All right, so we got that restart menu to work. However, when you click restart, none of the objects resets. So that's what we're going to work on now. Okay, so now if you scroll down to your restart subroutine, we're going to go through the process to restart everything. So what we don't need to do is now call this load method right here, because basically if you look at your main menu, we're calling restart here. So we can just take the code that's in this form load. So I'm just going to take this code right here, cut it, delete the load event, and I'm going to paste that code down in our restart subroutine. So now every time we start a new game, it's going to reset the level, reset the block break count, lives, and score. One thing I am missing is the status, so I'm going to set status to single. Okay, and that'll come into play later in some tutorials. All right, additionally, what we want to reset is all of our ball positions, player positions, and any of the other variables that we've set. Okay, so we need to set, I guess we can start off with can play equals true. We want to make sure the game is not paused, so we'll set pause to false. And I'm just going to copy some of these ones that are up here. So copy ball stuck, copy the ball directions. Okay, we also need the X direction as well. We'll reset that to 0, so that tells you that tells the game that the player is not holding down any direction keys. And then we'll go ahead and reset the player box and ball box location. So I'll do that right here. So player box dot location, and we're just going to reset it to the middle of the screen. So we're going to set it to a new point. So it needs an X and a Y. So our X position is going to be me.width, which is the entire width of the form, and we're just going to divide that by 2. All right, so it takes this entire width, divides it in 2, so then it's going to put it here. But remember, the anchor point is the top left, so the anchor point is going to be there. So we got to subtract half of this player box width so that we put it exactly in the center. All right, so that's why I put it in parentheses here, because now we're going to subtract. We're going to do player box.width divided by 2. All right. We want to keep that same Y location though. The Y location of the paddle never changes, so just reuse player box.location. Make sure you get that .y at the end. We're going to reset the ball box location, but it's the same as the reset objects. So I'm going to just go ahead and reuse that, copy and paste that down here. All right, just to show that what the output does and restarts every time, we just want to make sure that this subroutine is actually being called. So instead of doing the system diagnostics debug, we're going to do console.writeLine. Okay, a better way to debug, because the output window down here gets cleared every time you do a playtest. All right, and I'm just going to put in nice big caps so it's easy to find. Game restarted. So now the issue is, if we play a little bit, I go and hit play, and right now my immediate window is showing. I want my output to be showing. So if you lose that on a playtest, notice I'm still playtesting here. Go into debug, Windows, output. Okay, and you get that output down here. Here's our first line, game started. So that was our debug statement right here. So as I was saying, when we start this game, let's say we hit a few blocks and then we lose our lives. Okay, if we click start new game, it's going to reset all the positions and the score and the lives and level and all that, and that's all good. However, we're still missing a couple blocks. And this gets kind of confusing because maybe we took these two away right now, but next time we play, maybe we take a couple different ones away. So we have to basically grab all of these blocks and reset them. The best way to reset them is just to get rid of them all and put them all back in. All right, so let's work on getting rid of them. So in this same restart subroutine down here at the very bottom, okay, we're going to create a for loop. Okay, so let's get this typed in and then I'll kind of explain what we're looking at. So we're going to create a variable I to hold an integer, and it's going to be equal to me.controls.count. So this grabs the count of every single control that's in the scene. So for example, if we come back here, we have the 16 blocks. We got the ball, we got the player, paddle, we got these labels and this text box. So what was that, like 22, 23, 24, something like that. There's a lot of objects. Okay, so we're going to have to subtract 1, and we're going to go to 0 and step by -1. Okay, as soon as you hit enter, it's going to put in that next. All right, so what this does is it cycles through all of the controls, but anytime you're cycling through controls, it always starts at 0. Okay, so the very first item is 0, the second one's going to be of count 1, third one's of count 2, so on and so forth. Any type of programming language uses that same syntax. So it's kind of hard to wrap your head around at first, but basically by subtracting 1, you're grabbing the last control that was placed and you're going all the way to the first. We're going all the way down to 0. 0 is going to be the very first object that was placed, or control, I should say. So we want dim C. C stands for control. So we're creating a variable that's going to hold a control, and we're going to set it equals to me.controls. And then in parentheses, we're going to put the I. So what this does is grab the ith control in the form and sets it equal to C. All right, so me.controls holds every single control in there. So when you use the value of I, it grabs that number of control from this. And now we're going to use that to remove all of the different blocks that are in here. So we have to do a check. We have to make sure that it is indeed the picture box we want. So we want if type of C is a picture box. So this is saying if the control is a picture box, what this does is eliminate the labels 1, 2, 3, 4. So we don't have to worry about deleting any of the information that we're showing to the player. And C is not player box, so making sure it's not the player. And C is not ball box, making sure that the control is not the box. And C is not UI box. All right, make sure you have the then in there, hit enter, and you might still get an error here like I do because I forgot the step where we actually talk about what the UI box is. So real quick, I'm going to come back here. This background behind the different labels, this is a picture box. Okay, so I was having some issues when I tested this earlier and went through the process, and my ball was actually hitting this picture box and deleting it. So what I did was go into name and I changed it to UI box. Okay, you can call it whatever you want to, just make sure you grab that in code. But UI stands for user interface. So the whole reason I use that name is because I want to make sure that it's not deleted as well. All right, so we want to make sure we don't delete that. If you want to, if you have the same issue as I did, you can come up here and add that into your if statement as well. So you could say, and picture box is not UI box. And that'll make sure that that user interface box or that background box with the color is not deleted. All right, we got to finish out this if statement. So the last statement we're going to put in is me.controls.remove at, and we're going to tell it which control to remove. So this is saying if the control is one of the blocks that we want, then it's just going to remove that specific one. Okay, if this if statement is not true, then it's just going to skip over it and then go to the next one. And it just goes through all the different controls, finding the one that is a picture box and not the ones that we don't want to delete. And it gets rid of it. All right, so now if I play this and I go straight to play, since we're calling this subroutine at the start, there's not going to be any blocks, okay, because it cycles through and it deletes all of them. I just notice I'm missing my error list down here, so I'm going to go ahead and put that in, View Other Windows Error List, and there's no errors. Okay, just want to make sure there's no errors. It shouldn't have shown any, anyways, the box would pop up if I did have any errors. All right, now we need to work on putting the blocks back in, which shouldn't be too bad. Okay, after our for loop right here that removes the blocks, now we need to put them back in. So we're going to use another for, and at first we're going to set integer equal to 0, and it's going to cycle through 2, and that's why we created a variable called block break count, because that's going to hold how many blocks are supposed to be in the game. Okay, so basically we're going to grab that number. So we're going to cycle through I from 0 to whatever you set it to. I set it to 16. And it's going to step by 1 every cycle through. So at first it's going to start to 0, goes through, does what it needs to do. When it gets to the next, it's going to come back, and now it's going to use a value of 1. And repeat that all the way till it gets to 16. Well, what do we want it to do? We're going to create a new variable to hold just a generic picture box and set it equal to just a new picture box without any parameters. So what we're going to have to do is create these picture boxes right here by hand. Okay, because we're removing them in code, we have to put them back in code. The next step, we're going to grab me.controls.add. So what this line does is goes ahead and adds that picture box that we just created right here and adds it to the form so you can actually see it. But it's got all default properties, so we got to set every single little property of this picture box. Well, let's start with its size. So let's do picturebox.size equals, we want a new size. And now as soon as I put that first parenthesis, it's looking for either a point. If I hit this down triangle, this is the syntax we're actually going to use. It just needs a width and a height as integers. So if I go into my game view here and I click on one of my blocks, since they're all the same for me, if I look at my size property right here, that's basically what we're setting in code for each one of these blocks. So if I look at my size, it's 100 by 50. So I'm just going to take those dimensions, put them right in here. All right, so that's going to be the size of each of my blocks. Next one, let's change the size mode. So what this does is change what the picture box is going to look like. We want picture box size mode dot stretch image. Okay, so if I click on one of these picture boxes and I click on the little arrow, here's that size mode. Notice it's on stretch image. So that's what we're setting, only we're doing it in code instead of the designer here. All right, well now we got to tell it the correct image to use. So we do pb.image. So this is setting the image of the picture box equal to, and now we need to grab that same image we're using here, which is in your resources right here. So it's called block. So to access anything in the resources, we type in my.resources. And now you select the image that you want, block. The last one we're going to put in here is the location, and this one's the tough one, okay, because the location is going to be different for each block. Okay, there's a few different ways that we can go about this. I'm probably going to go about it the most tedious way, but hopefully it's the easiest way to understand. So at the top of your code, what we're going to do is create what's called an array. An array holds a series of values. I'm going to call it level 1 block positions. Okay, and it's an array, or you can tell it's an array because we're putting a set of parentheses after it, where each one of these variables, there's no set of parentheses, so it's just a single variable, where this is an array which holds a multiple values. and it's going to be of type point. So we're basically going to create a bunch of points that's going to hold the block positions or the starting block positions. When you create an array, it's got to be inside of a set of squiggly brackets. Okay, so I'm going to do this since it's going to be a super long list and it's going to go off the page. It's going to be a lot more readable if I put each point on a new line. So I'm just going to do new point, and then for now I'm just going to put in zeros, but later on we'll go ahead and put in our values here in just a minute. So I'm going to get this all copied out. So I'm just going to hit enter and paste it a bunch of times. Okay, and I'm going to need 16 because that's how many blocks I have in my scene. So we have 1, 2, 3, 14, 2 more, 15, 16. All right, make sure you don't have that ending comma at the end. You need a comma to separate every new point that you create. All right, as soon as I click off of that, looks like I do have an error. Oh, that's okay, because we didn't finish this off. All right, so we'll come back and finish these positions here in a little bit. Let's go ahead and polish this line of code off so there's no errors. All right, so what we want to put here is we're just setting it to level 1 block positions. And the whole reason we use this for loop right here is so we can grab which block we're referring to, because that's going to refer to the array of positions that we just created. And now we're going to use that integer that we created right up here. All right, so for example, if this is working on the very first block, I is going to be 0. It's going to set it to whatever position you put in the array here. So this would be position 0, position for the first block, second block, third block, fourth block. Okay, even though this is the first block, it has an index of 0. All right, let's go ahead and work on these positions. If you test it right now, all these blocks are going to be put on top of one another. And to be honest, in mine, I don't think you're going to be able to see it. Whoops, just noticed. This is actually a good error right here, good learning moment. Index was outside the bounds of the array. So what happened was I went to block break count, which is 16, and since it started at 0, the 15th integer, or the integer where I was 15, is actually the 16th block. So when it got to 16, there wasn't a position with an index of 16. This is index 15 right here. So that's what threw an error, because this position, a 16th position, doesn't exist. Well, make sure you stop playtesting right up here if you followed along with me and made the same mistake. So all we need to do is subtract 1 from block break count, very similar to what we did down here, right here. All right, so just subtract 1 here. All right, let's try that. Playtest, hit play. Notice again, it's kind of hard to see my blocks, but that's because they're all position 0, 0, which is the very top of the form right here, right in the corner. All right, you might be able to see part of the block like I can. Maybe it'll be totally hidden. But all we got to do is space out those positions, and this is the tedious part. So for example, I'm going to scroll back up to where my array is, right here. I'm going to go into my design view, and if I click on this first block, for example, I want to look for the location property right here. So 9568, that's where I want my first block to be. So in my code view, I'm just going to type in those values, 9568. All right, and as you can tell, this is going to get kind of tedious because you got to do that for each block. My first row, all the y values are going to be the same, so really all I care about now is the x value, 226. So this is going to be 226, and same y value because it's in that same first row, so that's going to be 68. All right, I'm going to go ahead and skip ahead, but you got the idea hopefully by now. Just go through and take your x and y positions of all these blocks, put them in your array. All right, so I got all my positions typed in correctly. I have all 16 of them. I'm going to go ahead and play test. And bam. Takes an extra second or split second, but it puts it all in there in order, and it still works. All right, if I go ahead and lose, there we go. Start a new game, so that's just going to restart. Bam. Calls it up, deletes all the boxes that were left, puts in all new ones, resets all of our variables, and we're good to go. All right, on the next tutorial, we're going to go ahead and set up the win condition and multiple levels.